If they're recording.
She was in my class. Oh, she was. from
Okay, thank you
Pleasantville.
everybody for coming. Appreciate it.
Really?
And now here they are. Of course, they wait until I. Okay. As soon as I sit down, that's when someone's coming in. Okay.
His mother.
This doesn't look like it. This looks like somebody else.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
You're sorry, it's his mother?
No.
All right. So this is the East Point Movie Critic Discussion Night. Thank you for attending. This time, usually last couple times has been pretty balanced. This time it's definitely skewed more people in person.
They're not.
We've got like 20 something in person and
You're accusing
just
us
a
of being
couple over there.
unbalanced?
But we've got it recorded for posterity. So anyone who missed it, there are a few people I know who said they couldn't be here. So they will get to see it later.
That's because we kept getting frozen out and we didn't come. We decided we should.
Yeah, unfortunately. Sometimes we had issues last time. It was tricky. Yeah, we had issues. So, all right. So also set your, today we're going to be discussing 5 Easy Pieces with Jack Nicholson, the Bob Rafelson movie. And next time, set your dates, your calendars. Hello, Sandy. So
Sorry,
we have
I'm late.
Sandy Geller joining us. Thank you.
Now, where are you from?
Where are you from, Sandy?
Here.
No, we're asking where we're from.
Yeah.
Oh, New York, Long Island.
Where? on Long
Where?
Island?
I was born in Forest Hills and
Oh,
lived
me
most of my
too.
life in Huntington.
Oh,
Oh, really?
I'm from Forest Hills and my daughter lives in Huntington.
Me too. I was Forest Hills till I was 4.
Wow. Yeah. Huntington most of my life.
All right. So,
Sorry, I'm late.
okay, so this is 5 Easy Pieces, and next time is October 27th. I'm picking that movie, and then the November one will be a vote again. So this one was the vote, but next time you're stuck with my choice. I hope you participate. It's the movie Quadrophenia. It's on HBO Max, Crackle, and Plex. And if you're familiar with the music of The Who, it's from their double album, Quadrophenia. It has a 100 on Rotten Tomatoes. Only 13 reviews, but 100%. And it came out in 1979. Okay, so that's next time. Now this time, 5 Easy Pieces. Let's start the way we normally do. And everyone, who liked the movie? Hands up. Okay, the majority. Good. All right, there's a few who didn't.
Not Ian.
No,
Ann
I know.
didn't. Marsha
Ann wasn't crazy about it. Who did not like the movie?
I was like,
Okay.
Like, what's the big
Okay.
deal?
And was anyone kind of just like so-so on it?
yeah, me, I was so-
Okay.
so-
Okay, all right. So let's start with someone who liked the movie. You want to tell the group what you really liked?
I'll tell you.
Go,
I
Nancy.
really like the movie. First of all, for 1970, it was incredibly innovative. I kept saying, this was 1970.
Yeah.
They showed.
Showed a boob. Wait a minute.
They showed a boob. Second of all, I feel like, speaking of goats, I feel like Jack Nicholson was like one of the greatest of all time. Phenomenal actor.
Oh, yeah.
Plus, I think he showed, I told him at dinner, a lot of what's going on today. These two dichotomies between two societies that are so different. The one he fell into with this girl who was in this country and western,
Uh-huh.
and this highbrow,
Yep.
which were also sort of full. So I thought it was a very interesting dichotomy between two different societies and people not knowing what to do with themselves.
And that was his dilemma, right?
Yeah.
Right. He was
And the
rejecting his origins and going the complete opposite direction.
I also felt that it was the first time when you saw such dysfunctional people, and everybody was dysfunctional in a different way. And for 1970, that was very unusual.
It should have been Greece, right?
I'll describe why
Yeah.
Rafelson put that in the movie in a little bit when I get into his background,
Yes.
because there's legitimate reasons for that. But do you remember what Jack Nicholson, how he described his house? Oh, there's remember what he called it? The asylum.
Oh, that's right.
Remember?
That's right, that's right. And
He said, you want to stay here in the asylum? He was talking to Susan Onspach, Catherine.
God bless you.
Yes, of course, absolutely. But what was his tendency to do anytime he stuck around somewhere would be
Yeah.
leave, right?
Well, it also was the Vietnam era, so that's
Yes, yes, that was definitely a factor, right, which you have in the news in the background a little bit. They didn't overdo it, but they did reference it, right, exactly.
Then a contrast of the two different groups, hillbilly music and classical
Right.
music.
Yes.
Denoting
right.
Yes,
the different people.
yeah, the schism there,
How
right?
about the lesbians they pick up?
That's
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Aren't they lesbians?
I didn't think they were.
I didn't think they
No,
were
I didn't take it
lesbians.
that way. I recognize it's possible, but I didn't take it that
I
way.
did. Yeah, I like that one,
That's
that one
interesting.
girl
I
who
didn't think
kept
they were.
saying, blah, 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 blah. I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, and you know, she used the word crap 11 times in that one conversation I counted.
I thought they were lesbians.
They may have been.
They might
They
have.
may have been. So do you know who the quieter one was?
I don't.
Sally Struthers?
No,
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 she
no,
was in
not in
the
the car.
movie,
She was in the
but
movie
The
though.
one from the bowling alley.
No, in the car, the stranded car, the other girl,
The
not the
little
one who
one,
talked
the
and
little
complained.
one.
The little one was Tony Basil.
Oh my God.
You know the song
Yeah.
Mickey, hey Mickey, you're so
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, I
That
didn't realize
was
she was a
Tony Basil.
choreographer. I didn't realize that.
She was a big choreographer on Broadway, TV specials,
MTV.
and MTV. Yep, she did a lot of music videos, but this was all before that, and she was an actress with little parts. This was one of them. And I have actually, let me put this up there now. I'll do this to show you. So the cast actually had a lot of big names, in many cases before they were actually big, and familiar faces. I'm going to put this up to the camera. If I can get over there. Let's see.
No,
Yeah,
let him just maneuver.
Okay. Now, I'll show you guys in a sec, but you can see a lot of famous people there. So not only Jack Nicholson, oh, and I want to show a picture of Bob Rafelson, so you can see him,
Who was that?
the director and writer, Bob Rafelson. So it's a small picture. I couldn't, the bigger ones didn't come out as good, but you can just kind of see he's got a thoughtful look, but he's got a kind of a quirky hat on. And then as far as the cast, I mean, Susan Anspach always played sexy roles back then. That was her thing. Karen Black, this was kind of a big thing for her because it was her only Oscar that she was ever nominated for, was in this movie. Sally Struthers, it was her first real screen credit. And Lois Smith, Fannie Flagg, remember from TV, Bob Newhart Show, The Secretary, all that, many other shows. She was Sally Struthers' buddy. Well, no, actually, she was Stoney. She was Elton's wife. And then Richard Stahl, the recording engineer, kept complaining about Jack Nicholson's sister taking
Yeah.
too much time.
Yeah, I read.
Famous character actor. I mentioned Tony Basil. Ralph Waite was Jack Nicholson's older brother.
Oh, I didn't.
Carl with the neck brace.
Oh,
That was Ralph Waite. And so anyway, some pretty big names for before they were actually big. Now, I also wanted to cover, so people who had mixed feelings or didn't like the movie, what struck you about it that it didn't hit you right?
Very slow.
You thought it was slow.
Very slow. You really had to wade through it.
Okay, so that's interesting you said that, because the first time I saw it was, 40 years ago, 50, whatever it was. But when I watched it again, I thought it was slow the first time, but when I saw it the second time, I didn't.
Interesting.
I actually thought the pace was really very well done and the editing was really sharp.
Watch it the second time to find that.
Yeah,
out.
I guess, yeah, but it really struck me because I felt what you did the first time. So that was kind of interesting. Any other?
Yeah, I thought I had seen the movie, but all I ever did was remember that diner scene.
Right.
And I never saw the movie, but
Oh, you
until
never saw it.
yesterday,
Okay.
I just thought I had because that was such an iconic scene. And the rest of the movie didn't live up to the diner. And, I was like,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, well, it was quick, right? I remembered it being longer, but it was quick.
Everybody.
Yeah, it was very well.
Right. right.
And I thought I had remembered it as being a tuna sandwich, not an omelet.
I
that he
thought it was a hamburger.
Yeah, see, it was.
See, and I thought it was a chicken
I
salad
thought it was
sandwich. So that's pretty fun. I also misremembered because way back when the scene was starting, I was thinking, I thought Karen Black was the waitress. And she was a waitress, but not in that scene.
Well, and I thought that famous scene was from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, okay, well, yeah.
Oh, that's really funny.
Yes.
That's great.
All right, so that's time, changes the way we remember things.
Yeah.
All right, now, the National Board of Review listed this as a top 10 film of the year, and Karen Black, they gave her Best Supporting Actress for it, even though she didn't win the Oscar for it. She was nominated. The critics' consensus on this was, quote, an important touchstone of the new Hollywood era. Five Easy Pieces is a haunting portrait of alienation that features one of Jack Nicholson's greatest performances. So the film was released in September 1970. The budget was 1.6 million, which is approximately 12 million now. The box office it did was a little over 18 million, a good return on the investment, which translates to about 135 million now. So that's a pretty big hit. And it was through Columbia Pictures. Bob Rafelson, and I really want to talk about him because the reason I put this even on the list and you guys voted for it was because he had just passed away in July at I think 89, I believe he was. So the film got an 89 actually on Rotten Tomatoes and a 78 from the audience, but it is in the the Library of Congress's National Film Registry as, quote, a work of enduring importance to American culture. Okay, now I want to give you some background on Rafelson. He was born in Manhattan, a Jewish family. His father was a hat ribbon manufacturer. Now this is interesting. His much older first cousin, once removed, was a screenwriter and playwright and the author of The Jazz Singer.
Oh my God.
How about that, right? And his cousin, Sam's son, Rafelson, wrote 9 films for director Ernst Lubitsch. And Rafelson was he was interviewed and asked about him, and he said, Samson took an interest in my work. If he liked a picture, then I was his favorite nephew, but if he didn't like it, I was a distant cousin. As a teenager, he would often run away from home. Does that sound familiar, like the character? To pursue an adventurous lifestyle, including riding in a rodeo in Arizona and playing in a jazz band in Acapulco. He studied philosophy at Dartmouth, where he made friends with screenwriter Buck Henry, very famous comic writer and performer. Rafelson was drafted into the Army, stationed in Japan, where he worked as a disc jockey, translated Japanese films, and was an advisor to a Japanese film company as to what films would be financially successful in the United States. He was fascinated by films he saw in Japan, and he kept mentioning the movie Tokyo Story, which I haven't seen in many, many years, but is considered one of the best films ever made. And maybe we'll get to it at some point during these discussions. So he said, I suppose my own aesthetic evolved from looking at certain kinds of pictures, Bergman, Ozu, who made Tokyo Story, and John Ford, which kind of shows the little Western influence here. His first professional job was as a story editor on a TV series, The Play of the Week, for producer David Susskind in 1959. He had some writing credits, but he was working for Screen Gems, and he had an argument with the powerful Lou Wasserman over creative differences on a TV show he was working at, culminating in Rafelson's sweeping, quote, awards, medallions, souvenir ashtrays, and other tchotchkes from Wasserman's desk, and he was fired. But the sweeping of everything off the desk, 2 scenes in the movie. Does it ring a bell?
Yeah.
One in the diner, and the other, was it in the bowling alley? Where was the other one?
In her bedroom.
In her room.
Her
Right,
dresser.
that's right, the dresser,
Right.
right, with Suzanne's stuff. Yes, exactly. Okay. The perfume bottles and everything, right? Okay. Now, so it's interesting. So while he was at Screen Gems, he met this other producer, Bert Schneider. They became good friends and created the company Ray Burt Productions, which eventually they added another person, became BBS Productions, and they started producing films. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the group The Monkees. Anyone? Okay. His idea. He created The Monkees, the concept for it. So he and Schneider, his partner, their first project was a TV series about a rock and roll group. Rafelson said the idea for the show was inspired by his own misadventures when playing in a band in Mexico, and this was before A Hard Day's Night. He said, I conceived the show before the Beatles existed, at least in America, and it was based on his time as an itinerant musician, more interested in having fun than in earning a living. Sold the idea to Screen Gems, and when they were unable to get the Dave Clark 5 or the Lovin' Spoonful for the show, they ran ads in Variety and the Hollywood Reporter for musicians. And that's how they got the Monkees. Okay. So, and if you want to dismiss the Monkees, the TV show actually won an Emmy for Best Comedy in 1967. People who, where I got it over here. I got to tell you who auditioned. Some of the people who auditioned and didn't get it are pretty famous too. Okay. The joke was Charles Manson auditioned, but that was not true. Mickey Dolenz, one of the Monkees, made that up. But Stephen Stills, Danny Hutton, who ended up in Three Dog Night, and Paul Williams were among the hundreds who auditioned and didn't get it.
For what part?
For the Monkees,
Creating the group.
to be in the group. It only lasted 2 seasons and 58 episodes, but it became a pop culture phenomenon and brought Rafelson and Schneider an Emmy for Outstanding Comedy Series. The people who wrote the songs for the Monkees included some of the best songwriters ever: Neil Diamond, Carole King, Harry Nilsson, Jon Stewart, Carol Bayer Sager, Neil Sedaka, and most of them were Boyce and Hart, Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart. And just to give you another idea of how, where did it go? Oh, it's right here. They had a kind of a unique, here it is. In Billboard magazine, it said when Michael Nesmith passed away a couple years ago, last year actually, it said the Monkees set a Billboard chart record in 1967 that still stands today. When Billboard began in 1956, publishing the top records, no one else had 4 #1 albums in a calendar year except the Monkees. And in 1967, according to one report, they outsold the Rolling Stones and the Beatles combined. That's how big they were in 67.
Is it true that Mike Nesmith's mother invented whiteout?
It is true, yes. Mike Nesmith's mother invented whiteout. He inherited a fortune, yes. That is true.
Oh, no.
I knew that.
Yeah.
You're just full of trivia, aren't you?
Now, so after the Monkees were over, the interesting part was they made a movie with them called Head. And the joke that Rafelson told was he wanted they were going to call it something else, and they decided to do it that way because he said, then every other movie we would make, we could say, from the people who gave you head. That was his line. So wait till you hear who wrote the movie. Jack Nicholson wrote the movie with the Monkees. And it featured appearances by him, Victor Mature, Terry Garr in a very small role, Annette Funicello, Frank Zappa in practically a walk-on, Sonny Liston, the football player from the Packers, Ray Nitschke, and Dennis Hopper. And it actually got a 71 on Rotten Tomatoes, but it's kind of unwatchable. It's pretty hard to watch. It's called Head. It's with the Monkees, and it was kind of, they were already on their way down. But anyway, it was the first movie he made, and he talked about it, but it's a plotless stream of consciousness film. But the next movie he made after that was Easy Rider. Okay, great movie, directed by Dennis Hopper, premiered at the Cannes Film Festival and quickly became a big phenomenon. And if you think this movie, 5 Easy Pieces at 18 million, did really well, that one made 60 million. So that's, hundreds of millions of dollars back then. Okay, let's see. He explained, Rafelson explained the idea behind the film company with his partners, BBS. My thought was there's so much talent here in the US, but little talent for recognizing it. I thought together we could do this, but that Bert Schneider should manage it. Now, the film critic Manola Dargis from the New York Times recently highlighted Rafelson and Schneider for founding, quote, the groovy 1960s company Raybert, later known as BBS, which gave us Easy Rider, 5 Easy Pieces, and we'll know this one too, The Last Picture Show, and also Hearts and Minds, that won Best Documentary. It's an anti-war documentary about winning the hearts and minds. If you've never seen it, it's very powerful. Nothing at all like the movies we've been talking about, very different, but very powerful anti-war documentary. So 5 Easy Pieces was written by Rafelson and a woman named Carol Eastman, who in the film, it says it uses her alias, Adrienne Joyce. And you know the plot because you saw it, I won't go into that. In his original 1970 review in the Chicago Sun-Times, Roger Ebert called it, quote, a masterpiece of heartbreaking intensity, adding the movie is joyously alive to the road life of its hero. Robert Eroica Dupuy is one of the most unforgettable characters in American movies. And in his, quote, great movies, unquote, essay on the film, Ebert reflected on seeing the impact of having seen it for the first time. We had a revelation. This was the direction American movies should take, into idiosyncratic characters, into dialogue with an ear for the vulgar and the literate, into a plot free to surprise us about the characters, into an existential ending not required to be happy. He later included it in his Great Movies series. And then Rafelson's next film was The King of Marvin Gardens, released in '72 through the same company. And it also had Nicholson. Scatman Crothers actually played a bad guy in it, and Bruce Dern was Nicholson's, I can't remember if it was cousin or brother or friend. But anyway, they had pipe dreams that didn't work out, and it was kind of imploded in Atlantic City. All right, let's see. In his obituary, Hollywood Reporter talked about, okay, Bob was urged by his partners and friends not to make the movie with the Monkees. They felt he had done his work with them and their audience was already defecting, but Bob felt he wanted to complete the cycle. He felt the truth of the Monkees' story had not been told, their manipulation, protest, and substantial talents. He felt the true story in abstract form would be more than worth the telling. To create the screenplay, he teamed with Nicholson, who was then a B actor and aspiring writer. Reportedly, the duo devised the storyline during a marijuana-fueled session with Nicholson then fashioning it into a script while under the influence of LSD. Here it is. It was originally called Changes. The title was switched in a nod to the drug culture, and they wanted to say from the guys who gave you head. Critics found the movie disjointed, confusing stream of consciousness, very true, that deconstructed the pop persona that had made the Monkees stars. Okay, let's see. Okay, and he talks about Easy Rider, which you know about. I guess the third partner. All right. Oh, here. As a teenager, Rafelson rebelled against his father and refused to follow him into the textile business. I was one of those guys that took on all comers, he told the Times in 1997. I started leaving home at the age of 14. Okay, I told you the story about Lou Wasserman. Oh, okay. So when Rafelson died, his other movies, he had some other really good ones. Well, Black Widow with Deborah Winger and Teresa Russell. And then a not good one with Jack Nicholson called Man Trouble in '92, and Blood and Wine, and then another one, No Good Deed. Rafelson also directed the music video for Lionel Richie's All Night Long. Hugely popular. Oh, this is kind of interesting. While he was in high school, he began dating a woman named Toby Carr. They married in '55. She worked as a production designer on 5 Easy Pieces, King of Marvin Gardens. Oh, another movie he made, Stay Hungry, which kind of launched Arnold Schwarzenegger's career, about the weightlifting business. But it was sort of a comedy about it. But anyway, it launched Arnold Schwarzenegger's career. A good movie. His son, he had 2 children with her. One passed away. She was killed at age 10 when a propane stove exploded in their home in Aspen. His other son is a songwriter, and he wrote the 1986 Madonna hit, Open Your Heart. So anyway, some of the critics' comments for this. Anyone want to interject anything at this point? I'm on a roll. I don't
Bowie changed his name to David Bowie because his real name is Davy Jones.
That's right. Good point. Yeah, Davy Jones from the Monkees even though David Bowie, whose name was David Jones, he couldn't use it because Davy Jones from the Monkees was already on the scene. So he was sort of stuck.
That's pretty good.
That's good.
Sure, that's excellent.
Yeah, yeah.
Very good.
Okay. There's a couple of moments I thought were kind of interesting. I have some notes in the film that I wanted to share on my thoughts on it. If you remember the scene in the bowling alley, when everybody leaves and he's there with Sally Struthers and her friend, I forget the woman. Rayette's waiting in the car for him, and she's not happy. She has a hunch what's going on. She's not stupid. She knew at least what was going on. So, well, but not that stupid. She realized what was going on. But do you remember she threatened to commit suicide if he left her?
That's right.
Her line was, "You will read about me in the paper." Okay, so that makes the ending kind of more interesting, right? Because she actually did that twice, where she commented in the film about, and he said, "Well, you won't kill yourself, will you?" And she didn't really exactly answer it. So, and then at the end, of course, he makes the decision to leave her.
Let her kill herself.
And what do you think? Was she pregnant or not?
I don't
That
know.
was
That's very
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
Yeah. I mean, but what a great scene when the other guy, I forgot his name, the other
Yeah,
couple,
yeah.
and his wife
Right.
had that baby, and
Right.
they're living in the trailer, and he kind of alludes, wouldn't you like to live like that? And by the way, I'm thinking, I don't blame you, Jack. I'd be out of there too. I mean, he's thinking, and like, this is all there is.
Right.
That's what those people thought, that there was no other way to live, and that's what she was pathetic.
Right.
Right, and she was pathetic. She followed him around and he left her in that motel and then she found 2 weeks.
Right.
But that's what he said to his friend. I'm not like you.
Right.
He is.
Right.
I'm from a different place.
Yes.
He was.
You just think I'm like you.
Right. Well, and then do you remember what happened to Elton? How Elton left the movie
Oh, yeah.
in handcuffs.
Well, and Jack Nicholson had just basically cursed him out going away. Then he showed his loyalty to a friend by turning around because he thought he was getting,
Right.
But you
beat
know
up.
what? I could relate, I mean, I can't relate to Jack, but I could relate to his problem. First, he's in this house that they're total hypocrites. I mean, the whole musical thing was not really about music. I don't know what all of that was about.
Right.
And they had these inane conversations. And then he goes from that, which is ridiculous, to totally the other side,
Yep.
which is also pretty meaningless.
Yep.
And so I don't know. So then at the end, he says he didn't care where he went. And why did he leave the jacket?
Right.
Well-
That's a great question. I don't really have, I couldn't find
He
it. in
could have
the
gone back
reviews,
and
but
gotten it.
He
Well-
could have, right?
Yeah.
But
I think he was like, I am going to give up. He might have left, he should have been naked,
yes,
I mean,
that's the way I took it.
yeah, like he should have been naked, no wallet, no jacket, no,
It was,
no
it was a
nothing.
metaphor
Right,
for shedding his clothing and starting over. And they
Right.
weren't gonna show him naked, getting in a truck, but that was essentially what it was. He was like, as he said, it burned up. He said the jacket burned up. Oops, it was a fire, it burned up.
plus he couldn't have escaped so easily because Rayette would have seen him, I
Yes.
think. So he didn't want that to happen. And you know what? Rayette might have been pathetic, but she was also empathetic. And she loved this jackass, okay, who was really one of the most horrible men, probably the reason why there is Me Too today, because he was an abusive asshole, excuse my French, okay? But he was abusive as could be.
I really liked him. What do you think that says about me?
Well, wait a
Nothing
second.
like Stan, by the way.
Well, no, it's funny that you say that because, let's think about original attraction and women who loved
The bad boy.
the bad boys,
Exactly.
and that was a classic illustration of that. And about how men got away with treating women like that for years and years and years. I mean, just, in our business places, men used to be horrible to women and treat them like shit. And there's, I'm
Yeah.
glad that Jack Nicholson ended up in the cuckoo house, okay? Because he was a fool. Okay?
Ed?
So,
Ed? Ed?
yes.
Ed?
Go ahead, Bill.
Elaine and I watched it the other night. I'd seen it for the second time. I looked at it as he was a real sad case. Initially, you think he's sort of a bum working on the oil drilling and the way he was hanging out. And then when he goes home, you recognize that he came from a very intellectual and highbrow family. And you recognize that he had real talent, as did his father and his sister, the family was a little nuts. But I think he was caught between the two. He couldn't live in the highbrow world because it didn't suit him. And when he tried to leave that and go down to the lower end, he couldn't live there either. My assumption is that he was going to die because he was just a lost person.
Right, and he kind of talked about that. Where is it? There was a line I had here. Oh, okay, well, he called the house the asylum. He told his father he needs to, quote, get away from things that get bad if I stay. Now, you remember his father was, basically practically comatose. He couldn't really respond.
But when he was talking to his father outside, he was crying. I think it was a part of him that wanted to live up to his father's expectation, but he couldn't do it.
So that was an interesting scene because I read, and Rafelson was quoted as saying that he and Nicholson had a disagreement about how to play that scene. Nicholson wanted him to cry in it, and Nicholson said, no, I don't think that's right. I don't think I should cry. And they agreed to just do the take and let happen what happened. And you saw he broke down and he cried. And it said,
But he wasn't the type, though. I think he was.
Well, it said they did it in one take. They just did the one take.
I don't know if the emotion got to him,
right?
But for the character he was playing, you wouldn't think he would give a damn.
Yeah, right.
But he did, otherwise he wouldn't have gone back.
Yeah.
Otherwise he wouldn't have gone back there.
He had some sense of
Exactly.
whether it was misplaced loyalty or affection or just
It was still his
a
father.
sense of
At the end the
obligation.
day, It was still his father.
Yes, exactly. It was still his father, like with Elton. It was his friend. I'm going back. And then also in the car earlier when he was walking out on Rayette,
Oh, right.
he's about to start the car and then he starts going crazy and is like, oh, damn it, I got to go back again.
Right.
Right?
And also
He had
when
a
he
sense
played
of
that,
decency.
when he played that music, when he played the piano
Right.
for the woman,
On the truck.
I mean, it was, no, not on the truck. When he played in the
Susan
house.
Allen's house.
The easiest thing.
It was, I felt the emotion of the piano piece when he played it. So there was all this feeling inside of this guy, but he couldn't live in that world,
Denigrated.
in that refined world or in the refinery world.
Well, he denied the emotion of the piece. His
Exactly,
comment,
he did.
this was actually going to lead me right to my next note. Catherine asked Bobby to play the piano and he plays, quote, the easiest piece I could think of, Chopin, and I played it better when I was 8. And after her emotional response to the piece, he's saying, his saying that caused her to rage at him and she storms off. And then of course, his worlds collide when he gets embarrassed when Rayette shows up at the house and he's got, he's associated with her and she's like, he looks the way his family's seeing her as lower class.
Where's the TV?
And right, she's asking where the TV is and everyone else is like trying to talk on this snobbish, highfalutin level, which as I think the filmmaker took the side of, Rafelson took the side of Jack Nicholson's character in showing them to be very pretentious and basically full of crap. The discussion was like kind of nonsensical.
Ed, what was interesting, that woman who was talking,
Lois Smith was the actress.
he actually protected his girlfriend.
Right, he did. But I don't think that was really what he was doing. I think he was just lashing out at her. And he was using it, the guise of protecting her as his excuse to lash out, frankly. But yeah, he was doing it. He was
Interesting.
When he played that piece, that piano,
The Chopin,
it was brilliantly done. And she was moved and he said, I felt nothing.
right, exactly,
Right.
right.
Yeah.
And then if you remember when he tried, because he obviously was excited by the Catherine Susan Ansbach character, and there were 2 scenes he tried to talk with her. Both of them ended really badly. One was when he was coming off the ferry and she was going on. So you got the cars behind them honking and all that.
Oh, yeah.
So so that wasn't, it was impossible for them to have a real conversation. He said, I have to talk to you. Cars honking, couldn't do it. And then later, he was trying to talk with her in the house after she ran out from the pretentious discussion, and he runs after her and he's trying to find her all over the house. Can't find her. And he ends up not being able to find her. He walks in on his sister with the Spicer, the physical therapist guy, whatever. And he gets beaten up by him because he's so angry. He's frustrated.
Well, I thought it was interesting, his relationship with his sister, because she was the only woman he treated well. Everybody else, he was like a shit to.
That's a good point too. Excellent point. And his sister was crazy, but I guess he loved her, and I think she embarrassed him into going to see his father, or pushed him to his father.
Yeah, she brought the guilt on him. Right.
What about what the girl he wanted to take with him who wouldn't go?
Kathy.
Kathy.
Yeah, the brothers, and she knew he was.
Right. Her comment to him was, how can you ask for love when you can't love yourself?
Right.
So that was her dismissive comment to him. But you remember what his brother said, he talked about, well, you were off on your misadventures, whatever, wasting your life, whatever. That was the way he looked at his
Yeah,
brother.
but the brother was a pretentious prick.
Yes, he was,
Yeah.
but that was his family.
That was his family.
Right, right. And then the sister, the interesting thing is, we had a little discussion about this. When he came into where his sister was doing in the recording studio, and she was doing like the soundtrack to something, she was playing.
Yeah.
And then she was humming, which kept, and then the Richard Stahl character kept getting upset with her for ruining the cut. But then he said, it's not Shakespeare we're doing here. He laughed dismissively. My take on that, and Anne didn't agree with me, was that she's doing the background music for a porn movie. They kept showing porn movies in the back behind him in the movie. That was my take, and no one else took that.
I missed the porn in the back. I thought I liked the movie a lot better than I did.
Well, he kept walking past all these X-rated theater things. So,
And what just occurred to me? You see the father obviously infirmed, but when you see how he ruled the family, he obviously was a tremendous power in the family, because he takes Nicholson, who obviously didn't have a heck of a lot of interest, and makes him a hell of a piano player, and he makes the daughter, a musical. They were all fine musicians, and I presume the father forced them all into it.
yeah, that's probably a safe assumption.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe not so much force with the older brother, who seemed to be very comfortable in that role, but yeah, maybe the others.
But
Yeah.
that was kind of the times too. That
Right.
was a very rebellious time for people of that age. I mean,
Yes.
because I relate to that age group. And by the way, I remember vividly, because I was right out of college, that movie, everybody saw that movie and everybody talked, they somehow, that age group related to that, because I remember talking about it, related to that movie, because I think they were confused about where they belong.
Well, it was the Vietnam era, and they don't know where they're going because they could be drafted.
That's right. That's right.
So,
Okay, there was another line he had when he was talking to his father that was kind of funny, sad. And he finally said to him, if we could talk, you wouldn't be talking. And then the other thing I made a note on, the last scene, right, when Nicholson's about to leave the bathroom, before he leaves the bathroom, he stares in the mirror, and he just stares and stares, and to me, it's like he's asking himself, are you going to do this again? And he decided to do it. He hung up
was
the-
looking
hung up
into
the-
his own
I thought he was deciding who he was.
I agree.
That's
I was
what I
gonna say,
said.
I was thinking, who am I?
Is he going to stay or is he going to flee again?
Right.
No, it's who am I?
Yeah.
That's a who am I scene. The mirror scenes are always, that's a typical
Right.
Hollywood trick, not trick, but motif. When
Yeah.
someone's trying to get in touch with their inner self, they look in the mirror. That's
Right.
what that
And,
was. That was
so
very exaggerated.
he goes into the truck without his jacket. And you remember what the truck driver said to
It's
him?
gonna be
Yeah.
cold.
It's gonna be cold,
It's
yeah.
gonna be
He
cold.
said the place we're going to is colder than hell.
Yeah.
He said, I don't care.
And he didn't care because to me, he was already there.
He's already cold.
He was already in hell.
Yeah.
So he was again searching what he called his auspicious beginning, for another auspicious beginning. Okay, so Gene Siskel had a comment that he wrote originally in 1971 when the film was pretty new. What is more striking about the film is that its secondary characters are also real. The acting appears to be non-acting. Karen Black is letter perfect as Rayette,
Mm.
and Lois Smith as Robert's sister gives the most sensitive small performance in the film. Nicholson makes it all go. He proves he's more than a character actor with many scenes, especially the confrontation with his father, and he gave it 4 stars out of 4. Peter Bradshaw in The Guardian, this superbly composed film comes as close to perfection as it gets. In the San Francisco Chronicle, and this was more recent in 2019, Edward Guthman wrote, "If the function of art is to help an audience feel less alone, then 5 Easy Pieces succeeds beautifully." Dennis Schwartz, critic in his own movie reviews, called it a moody study on alienation, class status, and dropping out. And then Kim Newman in Empire Magazine in 2014 wrote, "A key turn of the decade film with Nicholson railing against waitresses and barking at noisy dogs," which I didn't recall until I saw it the second time. He barks back at a dog at their house. As Rafelson observes, seedily picturesque roadside America.
Yeah.
And when he says picturesque, the cinematographer was Laszlo Kovacs, who was one of the great cinematographers of the era. Phil Hardy in Time Out said, and this is 2006, he wrote it, "The result is less a story and more a collection of incidents and character studies, all of which inform each other and extend our understanding of Nicholson's mode of survival, flight." David Denby in The New Yorker gave it a mixed review. He says, "The movie has more anger than it knows what to do with. That's its fascination and its weakness too." And Dave Kerr in Chicago Reader in 2007 said, "The film embraces proletarian chic, but still gets its laughs by abusing waitresses." That's kind of interesting. Okay. Oh, so I made a little note on one of Rafelson's later movies in 1996. So this is like 26 years later. The movie was Blood and Wine. In the critic Roger Ebert wrote about it. "It's a richly textured crime picture based on the personalities of men who make their living desperately. Jack Nicholson, again, and Michael Caine are the stars as partners in a jewel theft that goes wrong in a number of ways, each way illustrating deep flaws in how they choose to live." So you see the recurring theme with Rafelson's films. Even 26 years later, he's making a movie with some of the very similar scenes.
Eddie,
Yes.
you know what occurred to me when you mentioned the truck driver? In the position he was in the truck, somebody was going to have to take care of him. He had no money. He had no identification.
He gave his wallet away and he gave his jacket away. Absolutely.
Right. But now go back. In reality, his girlfriend, as wild as he was, his girlfriend took care of him. She cooked for him, had a place. It was her place, not his place.
Right.
And his friend took care of him. In other words, he was needy in that way. Even though he was a free spirit, he was tethered to people that made him, they took care of him.
Yes, Brad.
Yeah, one of the reviewers said that this movie was about an arrested development, that he never, he had an alpha male body and he was sexual, but he hadn't grown up. He was a 12 or 13-year-old really. And someone said earlier, right in the beginning, that he was a sad, despite his personality and his conquests, that he was a very sad, unhappy person. And that's exactly what I think.
Oh, yeah.
The last comment, if there's any defect in this film, I didn't get it. The first 30 minutes, he's dirty and he's blue collar, and he's on the last scene, he's on his hands and knees after his friend gets arrested and mud on his face. And all of a sudden, the next scene, he's got a coat and tie on, a different hairdo, and he's going to see his sister's recital. And maybe that's an editor's problem, but I didn't see any bridge between those two scenes. It was a little weird.
Maybe just home, maybe going home to the intellect.
I just thought it showed the schism in his life.
It was real, maybe that was intentional.
Yeah.
It was a very weird scene. I was scratching my head.
Do you remember the very first shot of the movie? What the opening scene of the movie was?
Some oil wells, I think.
The close-up of the dirt from a truck.
Coming by.
The close-up is right on the dirt in the truck as it's moving it, and he's on the oil fields, and all the dirt's going on. So I thought that was kind of interesting too. And then then you have the conversation, which Palm Apodaca, as she pronounced it. I remember the Mets pitcher, Bobby Apodaca, was spelled the same way, but she pronounced it Apodaca. Anyway, she keeps talking about all the crap. So, and Ann goes to me, what do you think was the point of that scene? So I ask you, what do you think was the point of that scene where they pick up the two people in the car, and that's this woman's talking about all the crap in the world, and but she doesn't want to talk about it.
Filthy, everything's filthy, filthy.
Well, that actually brought out his girlfriend. She was so passive in every other scene, yet she'd had enough of those two. And I think she showed herself as stronger when there was somebody weaker.
Yeah, they were kind of teasing waitresses, and that's when she got her back up on that.
Yeah, that was the most dynamic she was.
And Nicholson was surprisingly quiet, right, in that scene.
Yes.
And then he told them to both shut up.
Yeah, then he said to shut up.
Doing them out. He just tried to ignore it because it was so ridiculous what they were saying.
Yeah. And then the famous diner scene. I have the whole thing here. I won't read the whole thing, but so interesting enough, Nicholson improvised a lot of the scene. Some of it was written, but he improvised a lot of it. So I don't know how many takes they did of it, but that was kind of interesting.
Well, he's a very bright guy, even the character.
Yes.
And he's listening to this waitress, and if you're just complacent, okay, listening to it, it made absolutely no sense.
Yep.
I mean, that happens to you sometimes when you order something, you think, what do you mean you can't do,
But they showed there, the waitress was a rule follower.
Yes.
This is the rule.
And he's totally opposed to rules. I thought that was the point of the scene, is the contrast there. But the interesting thing is, after they finish that scene and they go in the car, he sweeps everything off, and he said, "You see this sign?" He sweeps off, and Palm Apodaca compliments him.
Right.
But you remember what he said? He said, "Yeah, but I still didn't get my omelet, did I?"
Get my toast.
And then her line was, "Yeah, but she would have punched him."
Did you wonder about the two women picking up a suitcase, a sewing machine,
Yeah.
and leaving their car and going to Alaska?
Yeah.
What happened to the vehicle? They
Yeah.
just left it there?
Yeah.
Yes, they did.
I said, how could they do that?
Yeah.
That is a little illogical,
Yeah.
but
Well, that was
a movie.
Wasn't running.
Wallet and his jacket.
Well, that's
Yeah.
different. That's part of the movie. But here's his car. They crashed and leave it in the ditch.
It was their brand new used car.
Right? And he's going to Alaska to leave it there.
It was the steering column that didn't work. Yeah. Okay. I have some interesting trivia. I can fill you in on that. Okay, the arguing with the waitress scene was inspired by Jack Nicholson actually doing this himself at a coffee shop called Cookies on the LA Strip, when the manageress, this is what it says, took his coffee away despite him only having just arrived, because the group of actors he had joined had been there for hours and were being told to leave. So he got upset. So I guess he kind of recreated the scene. When he goes to quit his oil rigging job, you hear the loud whirring of machines in the background. That sound effect was used by George Lucas in Star Wars for the trash compactor scene. That's pretty good. This one I thought was kind of interesting. The part of Palm Apodaca, Jack Nicholson wanted Janis Joplin to play her, but they did not approach her on it. And another source said Janis Joplin was approached to play it, but didn't take it. So I don't know what the truth is. It was two different sources.
Ed, after he quit, he was running. Noise was being made, and he's running and running. Did you get the impression that maybe they had actually struck oil?
No.
Okay.
No, I didn't recall it that way. So the character of Bobby is likely based in part on Rafelson's himself, his own life. It was revised in the screenplay by Carol Eastman, who wrote most of the screenplay, but it was described as autobiographical, and many of the clothes Nicholson wore in the film were actually Rafelson's own, including the black turtleneck that Rafelson had owned since his college days at Dartmouth. The line where Nicholson said, You want me to hold the chicken, huh? I want you to hold it between your knees. That was listed as one of the 100 greatest movie lines by Premiere Magazine back in 2007. Susan Anspach was screen tested for the part of Rayette, but they ended up giving her Catherine after Carol Lindley withdrew. And Ellen Burstyn was originally considered for Rayette. And she ended up having a big part in the next movie, The King of Marvin Gardens.
And the cuckoo's nest.
It was a third one.
Oh, she was in that too.
That was the stuff.
Was in Cuckoo's Nest? That was Louise Fletcher played the Nurse Ratched. Yeah. I think she was in another Nicholson movie though, but I can't recall. Yeah. Who was it? There was a line, there was a reference to this movie. The character of Linda Hunt, the diminutive actress in NCIS Los Angeles, she was in a scene with Scott Kahn. She said she worked with Karen Black and Jack Nicholson on the film, but she called it 6 Hellish Weeks instead of 5 Easy Pieces. Okay, does anyone know how the title of the film, how it got its name?
We looked it up because we couldn't, from watching the movie, we couldn't figure it out.
The music,
Sheila, the music pieces that he wanted to play.
Right.
Pianists, in order to advance, had to master these 5 pieces before their teachers would let them go
Advance, right. So, the sense is he's stuck on the 5 easy pieces in life.
Yeah, he never mastered.
So here's some interesting things. The writer Carol Eastman wrote the film. She wanted Jean Moreau to play Catherine. Ingmar Bergman stated on the Dick Cavett show when he was interviewed that he enjoyed this film when he saw it in the movies. And now for Catherine, Nicholson wanted Lauren Hutton to play Catherine. I thought that was kind of interesting. And let's see. Oh, there's a cameo. Bob Rafelson was actually in the movie. He's the man going into the elevator at the recording studio. It's a quick walk on like Hitchcock used to do. So, and then the original ending that Carol Eastman wrote for the movie had Nicholson driving his car off a bridge. And Rayette survived the crash, but he did not. And that was the ending she wrote, and they changed it to be this way.
Unrelated, but
Far off the bridge and he
and
died.
people from New Jersey.
All right.
Jack Nicholson was born in Neptune, New Jersey.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He was adopted. Oh, I didn't know he was adopted. I didn't know. That's I read about 30 years ago. I forgot about it.
Wow, I never realized how cute he was.
He
Oh,
was-
he
That's
was,
what they have to say,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, good looking he was. I thought it was cute in the movie.
Oh,
he was very handsome.
I think his eyebrow was a little screwed up.
Compared to what he looks like now.
Well, how do we look now, you know?
He has dementia.
Yeah, you recognize that voice.
Yeah,
I looked it up on
he's got
Google.
issues, yeah.
Really? I've got my issues.
He's got dementia now. That's why he's not around anymore. All right, I'm gonna
That's
stop the
too bad.
recording.
Yeah, I guess it's. Well, it had to be a good movie, because look at the good conversation.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
I have to say, I like the movie a lot more after discussing it.
I do too.
Watching it.
All of us do. We should have the discussion before the movie.
Yeah, I like it a lot more after discussing.